Delirium League, one of the most eventful leagues in recent times, despite the overall negativity surrounding the league's mechanics. Regardless, on today's video I'll be doing a recap of the league and share my final thoughts on it. Granted, I know that there's still some use left in Delirium, but since I'm not playing it anymore and I'm just waiting for Harvest, might as well deliver one last video on this monochromatic looking league. As always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, a rating and a comment help spread the video to the masses. We are pretty close to Harvest League and I'm ready to get the creative juice flowing with build ideas and whatnot, so be sure to join us on the channel for more PoE content. Anyways, let's begin this video with the mechanics of Delirium. So the deal with the league revolved around a mirror that was found in pretty much every zone and map, unless it was a unique map or the labyrinth. Touching the mirror will modify the zone to be under the influence of Delirium. When the mirror was triggered, the mechanic will spawn new monsters alongside these ugly looking things that could also spawn more monsters. It also spawned a thingy that could follow you around and explode after a couple seconds. But to spice things up, Delirium encounters are timed and you have to be fast to maximize the rewards. But to spice things even further, enemies got buffs when under the Delirium effect. Things like damage reduction, death effects, and in the case of rare and unique enemies, they will get possessed by Delirium and they will fire new attacks and spells at you. The goal behind the Delirium encounter was killing as many monsters as fast as possible to get as many rewards as possible. The reward amount was entirely dependent on how many stacks you were able to achieve through killing monsters. Alongside the regular rewards, you will always get Delirium splinters and sometimes Delirium orbs. The orbs could be applied on regular maps and force a permanent Delirium state for the entirety of the map. The more Delirium orbs that you applied on the map, the harder and more rewarding it could get. As for the splinters, once you got a stack of 300, they could be transformed into a simulacrum. The simulacrum is a monster level 75 activity consisting of 20 waves of Delirium afflicted monsters. Each wave gets random modifiers that empower monsters and ramp up the difficulty the deeper you go into this activity. As a side note, simulacrums took place in twisted versions of the towns we visited during the campaign. As cool as this was, this also shifted the difficulty as certain layouts were harder to handle than others. To get things hella spicy, Delirium also had two bosses that could randomly spawn on regular Delirium encounters, on Delirium orb maps, or were guaranteed on the simulacrum. One of them, Omniphobia, the sprinting fatty with the axe, was way easier to deal with than his planet-nuking brother, Kosis. Encountering either on the simulacrum or anywhere else was a challenge, but Kosis was always the stronger and harder enemy to overcome. Finally, there is a new mechanic that came with Delirium, and that mechanic is the cluster jewels. The cluster jewels are divided into three categories: small, medium and large. Cluster jewels can be placed in the outer jewel sockets in the tree. Once socketed, they give a set amount of passives depending on how many the jewel rolled when it dropped. These passives included new notables and jewel sockets, and these jewel sockets could also allow you to keep using cluster jewels in a descending order. At the same time, GGG also added unique cluster jewels that could define a build or change your playstyle dramatically. In my opinion, some of the most powerful items ever added to Path of Exile came from Delirium. So as you can see, Delirium introduced a lot of new things into the game. However, the league was also surrounded with a few controversies which we're gonna talk about now. The first controversy was the difficulty of the encounter itself. This became a meme when the league was just released, where interacting with Delirium came with a negative 10% XP penalty. This was further aggravated when you took into consideration that the mechanic was time-based and to maximize the rewards you had to go faster. In this same vein, the amount of death effects was turned to 11, and some people started joking about how enemies were more dangerous dead than alive. Personally, I did talk about this on my initial thoughts video that the amount of undead effects was way overtuned, especially when a good chunk of them quote-unquote followed you around until you either stopped killing monsters or you ran away from it as far as possible. Besides that, the enemies had layers upon layers of damage reduction, and as such, they had more screen time to chunk your HP away. Another thing that people weren't liking was the lack of rewards. For a league as challenging and punishing, some people felt like the rewards were nowhere near as good for the things that they had to go through, which also added to the general spite towards the mechanic. Originally, the devs were not going to change the difficulty of the league mechanic, but after a louder outcry of the community, they caved in, and slowly throughout the league's lifespan, Delirium became more accessible and also much more rewarding. The second one is actually something that has been snowballing for a while, and that is performance. Delirium, with its abundant undead effects, flash explosions and enemy counts, alongside map mods, master missions, ground effects, etc., could bring any device to its knees. I got blighted map flashbacks when playing with the mechanic due to how much crap was happening on screen and how badly the game's performance was. As always, this does cause some outcry, and this time I do believe that it was justified. Path of Exile is not the most beautiful game out there, nor is it the most demanding. Granted, I don't know how easy or difficult it is to work into optimizing the game even further, especially when you consider the thousands upon thousands different combinations of hardware that people possess. And this leads to conflicting experiences where some people have virtually no issues, whereas other people will be unable to play at all. However, just recently, GGG added the Vulkan renderer into the game. It is in beta, but it also helps immensely in the performance department. So I do thank GGG for adding the Vulkan renderer. And I know that the performance issues will more than likely continue, but as long as the devs keep working on the Vulkan renderer or optimize the game even more, Path of Exile should be playable for at least another couple of years before we definitely need to sell a kidney to afford top-of-the-line hardware. The last controversy Delirium brought into the table was a very interesting thing that should have never had happened in the first place, and it pretty much wrecked the economy and build diversity, and that thing is Herald, aka Herald stacking builds. Herald stacking is possible and further aggravated through the use of notables such as Purposeful Harbinger, Replenishing Presence, Heraldry, and Endbringer. However, this is further aggravated when you take into consideration that you can stack cluster jewel notables, aka use multiple of the same notables without diminishing returns. These builds will often use the Guardian due to the ascendancy being focused towards party play thanks to its bonuses granted by becoming an Aura bot. An Aura bot is just a player that crammed as many auras into his character, but in the process became unable to deal damage and was more of a support than a DPS character. The community will dub them Herald due to Herald sounding similar to Harold, and of course due to the Templar looking a bit similar to the Harold meme guy. Now, this controversy is actually divided into two parts. The first part involves people abusing anything considered as an aura. Now, I know, Andrew, auras are skills that reserve mana and grant you a buff. And you are right, that is what an aura entails. However, when the Herald stacking abuse was discovered, people started realizing that plenty of non-aura stuff were counting as auras to the game. And as such, they were buffing their character even further. Things like Headhunter buffs with Solstice Vigil, Tailwind, Consecrated Ground, the Fungal Ground on Spore Guard, Phantasmal Might from the Black Cane, etc. Combine all of these with the Guardian's Unwavering Faith, and you start getting characters that are out-tanking, out-regening, dishing huge amounts of damage and having huge amounts of energy shield just by stacking auras that are getting buffed by Heralds. It was pretty funny in a sense how the league started with a rather balanced class and ascendancy distribution, only for it to later devolve into the majority of players being Guardians, followed by Ascendant Guardians and then the others. However, things got spicy when the community manager originally confirmed that these interactions were not getting changed. This skyrocketed the prices of items that were the backbone of the aura abusing. And then, a few days later, GGG decides to backtrack and change the way in which the game handles auras. Meaning that unless the aura came from a skill gem itself, the buff will not be counted as an aura to the game again. In lamest terms, anything that is not coming from a gem reserving mana is no longer an aura and will not benefit from Purposeful Harbinger's shenanigans. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Because, just as an example, those who spent 70 plus exiles on a single Solstice Vigil were showcasing severe cases of regret when the news broke. Of course, with anything that is awfully overpowered, and sadly as it is customary in games like Path of Exile, it is believed that RMT saw a huge spike due to the amount of people attempting to recreate the build with the least minimal effort ever. However, I know that not everyone knows what RMT stands for, and just as a little break from the topic at hand, RMT means real money trades, aka I'm too fucking shit to play the game and I'd rather pay money for intangible virtual items that only have use every 3 months. I know that in general I haven't taken an official stance on the matter, but I do not condone RMT. I always thought that it was generally frowned upon to use RMT services. Of course, that's very naive from my part, thinking that everyone is honest, and sadly I think that Harold's existence allowed RMT to resurface and thrive. Granted, this is a problem that GG has to handle themselves, and no amount of virtue signaling from my part is going to stop it. So, coming back to Harold, the mechanic of using got changed early on in the league. Does that mean that Harold became obsolete, the economy recovered, and things went back to the norm? Right? Except it didn't, because this is the second part of the controversy. Because people stuck with the Harold builds, and the last time I checked, they went from being low-life builds to full CI and using obscure methods of reducing mana reservation and maximizing gem sockets. Harold went nowhere, and hell, I even gave it a shot. Even though I tried the hipster approach, and while I saw success in some areas, playing as a chieftain, I was not even close to the power that a true Harold build is capable of. But coming back to the controversy, I jokingly said in the Savior build videos how the sword had become a budget item. During Metamorph, the freaking sword was trading for around 11 to 20 exiles. This time around, I got mine for 5, and there was a period where it was starting to dip to 4 or even less. Other chase uniques, such as the Eternity Shroud, Pharaoh's Fur, Void Batteries, Cos Prismalis, Dying Sun, Starforge, etc., saw dips in their quote-unquote normal asking prices. Rare items with build-defining modifiers also saw no interest or use to the majority of people. Hell, things like Hollow Palm Technique, some of the most fun builds that could have ever been possible in Path of Exile, were relatively budget to achieve. The economy rotated around what Heralds were doing and what they needed or wanted. Granted, I didn't hate the situation, because that allowed me to come up with rather wacky stuff that happened to be hella effective because the gear required was not expensive to trade for. And that topic brings me to the conclusion on Delirium. If you have been following the channel for the entirety of the league, you know I wasn't particularly fond of Delirium. Hell, to me the only use that came out of the league mechanic was amassing simulacrum splinters, which I will turn into simulacrums and trade away. And that was because I didn't like it. I found no enjoyment out of the simulacrum, nor was I thrilled to keep playing with Delirium. Having said that, the league time span was also some of the most fun I've had with Path of Exile. The characters that I made and shared on the channel, the things that I got to experiment with, and the fact that most if not all the characters were successfully dealing with endgame stuff, were positive experiences that helped me circumvent my disliking of Delirium itself. We know that Delirium is going core. It is going to be a random encounter instead of being a guaranteed one like it is right now. But the chances of encountering the mirror are gonna be increased the more league mechanics affecting the area. This means that if you use Breach, Harbinger, Legion and Perandus Scarabs alongside Sextants or stuff in your maps like Beyond, Nemesis, etc., and also spawn Alva or John or Einhard, you're gonna increase the chance, if not guarantee, the mirror encounter on the map that you run. That way you can reminisce on all those beautiful on-jet effects, crap explosions and performance issues that came with Delirium. But hey, on the plus side, the chances of finding cluster jewels are getting increased if you interact with Delirium, so that's neat. Okay, snark aside, yes, I didn't like Delirium, but I didn't hate my time in the league. I actually had a lot of fun from beginning to end. If I had to grade my league experience, I'd actually give it a solid 8 out of 10. As I said, this is some of the most fun I've ever had in Path of Exile regardless of the mechanic. And with that said, that brings us to the end of this video. I know that I skipped Tuesday's video, but to be quite honest, I am holding back my video ideas for the next league. I want to start Harvest fresh, and for that I chose to take a little break off PoE until Harvest releases. The next league is close and I cannot be more excited for it. Having said that, the content schedule for next week is a league starter video on Thursday night after we know what's what with the patch notes. However, I may post something non-PoE related on Monday or Tuesday. We'll see. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. I wanna thank you for watching the video, and remember to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Also, rate and comment, or something, I don't know. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you again soon with more content. Take care, have a nice weekend, and peace out.